Anxiety that you cannot control, that keeps coming back, that you don't understand and are terrified of, will trick you into believing that something is really wrong, that something terrible is about to happen, and that you have to take protective or evasive action based on how you feel. Well, this week on The Anxious Truth, we're talking with Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett about how the internal experience of anxiety and fear is constructed by your brain. And we're going to talk about how it's based on a prediction that isn't so real, even though the experience itself is in fact real. You are genuinely afraid. It's not just in your head. Let's get to that right now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Anxious Truth. This is episode 327 of the podcast, recorded in October of 2025, in case you are listening in the future. I am Drew Linsalata, creator and host of The Anxious Truth. I am a therapist specializing in anxiety and anxiety disorders on Long Island, New York, also a former sufferer of the things we talk about on The Anxious Truth, but fully recovered for many years now. Thank you very much. Also a three-time author on the topic, psychoeducator, advocate, guy with too many expensive microphones, and also co-host of the Disordered podcast that comes out every Friday with my buddy Josh Fletcher. You can find that at disordered.fm. Today, we have a very special guest on, Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett. She wrote How Emotions Are Made. She is one of the key names behind the theory of constructed emotions, and she was generous enough to take about a half hour to talk to me today about the mechanism that creates and constructs the internal experience of anxiety and fear and discomfort inside of us, like it does with any internal experience or any emotion. And of special note today is the fact that Dr. Barrett is talking about how the internal experience is very real. Don't let anybody tell you that it's just in your head, but it is based on a predictive model that your brain is using where the prediction is actually not true, which has huge implications for how we would approach the recovery process in overcoming chronic and disordered anxiety. Now, before we get to the interview with Dr. Barrett, just a quick reminder that there's more than just this podcast episode or this YouTube video. The Anxious Truth is 326 previous podcast episodes and YouTube videos, all of which are free. There's all my social media posts. There's the books I've written, and there are very, very low cost and accessible workshops that I provide that help explain the concepts that we talk about in this podcast in greater detail. So head on over to theanxioustruth.com and check all those things out. I think you'll be happy that you did. All right, let's get to it. Quick programming note. If you're on YouTube, I'm really sorry. It's audio only this week. It was supposed to be video, but the recording that I got, unfortunately, out of the recording platform was really munged. You couldn't really even see Dr. Barrett, so it was sort of unsalvageable. So unfortunately, audio only this week. Sorry about that, but thanks for hanging in there anyway. I appreciate it. All right, let us get Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett on. We're going to do about 30 minutes or so. I'll come back to wrap it up at the end. Here we go. Okay, Dr. Barrett, welcome. Thank you for spending time today. Appreciate it.
A pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. So, in the context of anxiety disorders, and I know you've spent time in the clinical world too, which I appreciate, not just in research, we're talking to people who generally suffer from things like panic disorder or agoraphobia or illness anxiety disorder, OCD, that sort of stuff. So let's talk about how the theory that emotions are constructed, which I'm 100% behind. They're not imprints, biological imprints. I'll put you on the spot. How is fear constructed? For somebody with panic disorder, for instance, how would you say that experience is constructed? The peak of like, oh, I'm panicking, I'm freaking out.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, the way an instance of fear is constructed is not different from an instance of anything else. What you see, what you hear, it all works by the same set of principles. And the way that it works for somebody who has an anxiety disorder is the way that it works for people who don't have anxiety disorders. Which is not to say that there aren't differences in magnitude or speed or urgency of the feelings or the signals that those feelings derive from. But the general principles are the same. And I think the first thing you have to realize is, and this is a hard thing, I think, that your experience doesn't really reveal what your brain is doing to create that experience. So, the scientific method is rooted in, I'm going to answer your question, but I want to set it up because I think it's really important to understand that even the scientific method is rooted in taking a belief and then comparing it to the reality of experience. Mm-hmm. Experience is the considered to be the ground truth, right? And then our ideas for how experiences are created, those are ideas that have to be tested. The problem is that the resulting experience doesn't reveal anything about the the recipe that went to make it. Just in the same way that bread, you eat a piece of bread, it doesn't reveal to you all the sources of ingredients and the processes that go into making the bread and really transform the ingredients into this emergent, delicious thing that doesn't look anything like its basic ingredients. And fear or anxiety or sight or sound is pretty much works the same way. So the first thing to understand is that so you have to set aside your experience not as real. I mean, your experience is real, but it doesn't reveal the cause. It doesn't reveal how it's caused.
Yeah.
The first thing to realize is that your brain's most important job is regulating your body. That's actually what brains are for, more or less. And brains do hear and see and feel, but their primary job is to regulate the various systems of our body that have to be coordinated and regulated in a metabolically efficient way. So your brain is basically regulating. The metaphor that I use is your brain is regulating your body budget. Your brain is running a budget for your body. It's a metabolic budget. It's not a budget of money, but a budget of salt and oxygen and water and all of the things that keep us alive. And it's doing that 24/7, and that's its main job. And in order to do that job effectively, turns out the most effective way, the most cost-effective way to run any system is to predict the state of the system and correct when necessary, not to react. So fear to us feels like, well, most emotions actually feel to us as if they're given. That's why it feels like, oh, we must have a circuit somewhere that just got triggered,
Mhm.
and poof, and what emerges is this feeling and this urge to do something like run or freeze or what have you. But there is no circuit for fear in your brain. There's no circuit for fear in any animal's brain. Um, that's not really how brains are working. They're predicting.
Yeah.
So really
Mhm.
what's happening all the time is your brain is based on the conditions of the body and the world in the present moment. The brain is remembering instances from the past that are similar to the present in some way.
Mhm.
In psychology, a group of things which are similar in some way is called a category. So your brain is basically it's constructing a category from remembered instances from the past that are similar to the present.
Mhm.
And it has to use some set of features that make, like, what is it? So I said similar in some way. Well, in what way? Well, they could be similar in all kinds of ways. But one way they could be similar is that your brain is anticipating threat,
Yeah.
or that something bad is going to happen, or that it might happen. And so your brain will remember instances from the past where it prepared successfully for a threat. And you don't have it's all done very automatically. So you don't have
Yeah. You
an
never saying that.
experience of remembering, but that's what's happening under the hood. Your brain is remembering. And what a memory is literally, it's literally a plan for action and the expected sensory consequences of that plan.
Mm.
So what do I mean by that? I mean, so first your brain will remember, and it basically, remembering is reinstating a plan for changing your heart rate, changing your blood pressure, changing your glucose levels, changing cortisol levels to make it easier or harder for in this case, easier for your cells to metabolize glucose, changing all kinds of events in the body to support movements of the body, and literal copies of those signals. Like you've got some axons from neurons running down through the brainstem to your spinal cord to control your body. Literal collaterals off those axons are being sent to the sensory parts of your brain as predictions of what you will see next, what you will hear next, what you will feel next, so it's anticipating the sensory consequences of the movements.
Mm.
And then it's not preparing one plan, it prepares multiple plans with some probability. And then there has to be a selection process. And the selection process is really happening almost simultaneously to when the plans are being remembered, are being assembled.
Mhm.
And all of this is happening super quick, like under 100 milliseconds, right? But signals are coming in from the sensory surfaces of the body, from the retina, from the cochlea, from your skin, from the sensors inside your body. Some of those signals are going to fit better with the signals will fit better with some predictions than others. So in a sense, the signals from the world and the body are selecting which potential future is about to become a reality. In addition, you have an intrinsic to your brain, you have an attentional system, which can make the firing of some neurons easier or harder. So you've got these selection mechanisms that pick one prediction and complete it, and then you're prepared to act, and you just act as if you're reacting, when in fact the whole thing has been prepared really
Mhm.
over the course of 100 or 200 milliseconds
Yeah.
in advance.
With
So
outside of your awareness.
completely outside of your awareness most of the time. Although, I have some special examples I worked up, in the talks that I give to the public,
Mm.
where, and even in some scientific talks, where I will make it easier or harder for your brain to predict, and also have you experience what a prediction feels like, right? So, for example, show you there's this really wonderful illusion that I found on TikTok where um, you look at a stoplight, so you see a stoplight red, yellow, green, and then I show it to you again with a cyan filter over the stoplight, and what do you see? You see red and yellow and green, except that a cyan is a wavelength of light that blocks all the wavelengths of light that are about 600 nanometers and higher. So there's nothing coming off that image that would make you see red. And in fact, when I bring the gray background in, you can see actually the stoplight at the top is gray.
Mhm.
But when I remove it, you see it as red. And in that case, your perception is completely your remembered past, right? So every experience you have is a combination of the remembered past and the sensory present.
Mm.
And sometimes it's more of one, sometimes it's more of the other. Every instance of fear you feel is a combination of the remembered past and the sensory present. And what I would say happens in anxiety disorders, and of course we're lumping things together, like OCD is not the same as panic disorder, which is not the same as generalized anxiety disorder. But generally speaking, anxiety happens either when there's a lot of uncertainty and your brain can't predict well, or when your brain is using features of generalization, features of equivalence to create a category that are too general. Like if my brain used the feature threat as the feature of generalization, feature of equivalence to generalize from the past, that's a multitude of that's a massive category there that my brain is now attempting to maintain a lot of representation simultaneously. It's going to be very hard to whittle those down to one,
Mhm.
as opposed to if I was trying to literally pattern match from past to the present, like, and didn't have any. So my features of equivalence were red and you know address and like a literal percept, then I would be attempting to pattern match and I wouldn't be able to predict very well, except because I'd be literally trying for a one-to-one match. And there are brains that do predictions that way too. It's not a very efficient way to
Mhm.
predict. So you need to find the sweet spot. But if you're struggling, if something is called a disorder, what that means is you're on one end or the other end of that spectrum.
Mm.
Um, And disorder, I think, doesn't mean necessarily something is wrong. It just means it's harder.
Oh, I love
Um, yeah, that's how
that.
I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's harder. No, I actually kind of dig that. I have not heard that interpretation before, but that's pretty cool. One of the things that the audience is they struggle with, and again, you've been in this setting, so I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but the struggle here is I do understand that my state, my internal state becomes the problem. Like that verifies for me that there is a problem and I must follow and I must avoid and I must escape and I can't allow this and I have to engineer to never feel this way. And then my life gets smaller and bad things happen, but it feels so real that
No, but it is real. I
right.
think
Thank you.
this is the thing, Drew, that's really important to understand,
Yeah.
and we're not gonna be able to really delve into this in a lot of detail, but I do have a couple of videos online about relational realism.
Yeah.
And so
I'll link them.
not to
I'll link
not to
them.
get yeah, not to get too philosophical about it, but I think it's really important that in the past, really for millennia, but certainly for centuries, philosophers and scientists and people who are thinkers, have debated about the nature of reality. And the polarity that they've always presented is the following. One possibility is that there's an objective world out there,
Mhm.
okay, that's separate from you. And you perceive that world, and you can perceive it in a more realistic or a biased way. But the idea is that it's out there separate from you, it exists separately from you. And this is called realism, or what I would call traditional realism.
Mhm.
Okay, that when the tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Yes, it does. And you can be there to hear it or not hear it. You can, but it's definitely making a sound. Um, and then that was always contrasted with something called anti-realism, of which the most famous version is, well, there are many forms of anti-realism. Empiricism is one. That's a whole other conversation. But idealism, which is the idea that reality is all in your head. There is no tree out there. There is no, right? So the analogy would be fear exists as a circuit and an objective state that should be measurable by objective means, so that regardless of whatever you feel, I should be able to measure something about your face or what's happening in your body or in your brain, and I should be able to predict whether or not you are in a fear state. Like there's one fear state, or maybe a handful,
Mhm.
um, as opposed to fear is in your head, like completely. So when I say fear is constructed, people often take that to mean that I'm saying it's all in your
It's all
head. And yeah, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is reality is not is not there. Traditional realism is wrong, which I could explain to you in a few minutes, but it would take a few minutes. But the idea that there's an objective world out there separate from you is incorrect.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of evidence, you know. So, is this object solid? Well, yeah, to us, because we have the kinds of bodies that we have. But if you were a subatomic creature, this would not be solid to you, you know? Is this object objectively red? Well, no. It's red is not a property of the object. Red is a property of the relationship between what is coming, the signals, the wavelengths of light coming off this object, and our retinas and our brains as neurotypical humans, right? If you have three kinds of cones and a neurotypical brain, you will see this as red. Most people in the world do,
Mhm.
or most people in the Western world, anyways, do. There's a question about, categories and such. But if we just put those aside for a minute, but there are people, and when people have two kinds of cones, they're missing a cone. They don't see this as red, they see it as green or brown. And so then we say, oh, they're colorblind, like they can't see that. But there are also people who have four cones, and they don't see this as red either. They see it as some other color. If humans were neurotypically four coned, then this would not objectively be red.
Yeah.
It would objectively be some other color. And us with our three cones would be colorblind. What we call objective reality is really consensus amongst a set of humans whose point of view has been privileged. So what that means is everything is reality exists. It's not all in your head. It's relational.
Mm.
Reality is a relationship between what is in here, and what is out here.
Yeah.
So fear is real. Chronic pain is real.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's not, you're not imagining the pain, but every experience you have, every action you take is a combination of what's in here
Mm.
and what's out here, like what's inside you and what's outside you by design. That's how it is.
Oh,
So everything is a little bit in here. So fear, what this means is you have some flexibility, a little more flexibility than you might think, to create the meanings and experiences that come from the signals in your body and
mm.
the signals in the world. And what I'll say about this is you can practice predicting differently.
There you go. Sorry.
And if you do that, you can make meaning. What is your brain? I mean, your brain is basically always taking in these signals from the body and from the world. Well, the signals are actually only from the body because you only know the world through your body, through your eyes, through your ears. So really the brain is modeling the signals from the sensory surfaces of the body, and it's trying to make sense of those because those signals are the outcomes of some set of changes. The brain doesn't know what the changes are. It only knows the outcomes, which are those signals, right? So if there's a loud bang, that loud bang could be a door slamming in the wind. It could be thunder because it's going to rain. It could be a gunshot. What your brain needs to predict, to keep you healthy and well is different in those situations. So it has to make a guess. What is it using to make a guess? It's using your past experience and it's doing it predictively.
Yeah.
You can learn to channel that and learn to predict differently, and then signals of a racing heart or norepinephrine, which is causes your heart to race and causes your like you. So when your brain is not predicting well, or things are really uncertain, you get this surge of chemicals because your brain is attempting to learn. It's
Right.
attempting to take in the errors of prediction and modify its ability to predict, and that's what we call learning.
Yeah.
But that comes with a racing heart and sometimes being flushed, and we make meaning of that as anxiety and fear, but it doesn't have to be those things.
Well, that's
If
it feels so real is no, you're right. I agree with you
Oh, but it
100%.
is
It
real.
is
It
real.
is
No,
real.
that's
Yeah.
100%. Anybody who's ever sat in a therapy room with me will say, no, we start with acknowledging you are legitimately afraid right now. That is true.
Yeah,
Just that
exactly.
it feels so real. I think they're portraying, maybe it's in the prediction context.
Yeah,
The prediction feels right. There is a
that's right.
danger.
Yes, it
And now
does.
we have
The
to
prediction, yes, and
correct
that's
that error.
we call that affective realism.
Right.
Like when you have a really strong feeling, you believe it. It
You believe
feels
it.
to you like evidence that
Yep.
this is true.
Yeah.
And I also think that so affective realism is very strong. When the intensity of your experience is very strong. But one thing I like to say is, confidence or intensity is not validity, right? So, and I also think that, and I say this as a scientist, but I also say this as somebody who struggles with social anxiety
Okay.
my whole life, right? I don't have a body budget that is particularly easy to manage. Okay. Some people have, my husband has a nervous system of Teflon. Like nothing bothers him. I should say nothing, but like very few things bother him. Whereas, he's like floating in a sea of tranquility. And I am thrashing around, in a very stormy sea.
Yeah.
My nervous system, for what we call temperament maybe, or we could,
Mhm.
there are lots of little factors that add up to a big effect. Some people have body budgets that are easy to manage. Some people, theirs is a little harder.
Yeah.
Either way though, the brain is still managing the body in the same way, still making sense of those signals in the same kind of way. And you can kind of hijack that. You can practice. The thing that you have to remember, though, is that it's way harder than it sounds.
Oh,
Way harder than it
yeah,
sounds.
you got that right.
It takes way more effort than you might think. It's, I sometimes tell people it's like sort of like driving a car, but it's like way harder than driving a car, actually. Um, but it requires practice, like driving a car or building any skill.
Mm.
It's exhausting at first because you're making a huge metabolic investment in learning, in sort of tinkering with your predictions. You have to learn to take in new patterns and learn them. Um, Nobody has as much control as they would like. Maybe I just say that because I don't have as much control as I would like, but I think
Yeah.
nobody has as much control as they would like.
I think most people
That
would
con-
agree.
that control is harder to get, and
Mm.
it looks different than what we expect it to. We always think about control as like resisting eating that second piece of chocolate cake. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is deliberately exposing yourself to cultivate new experiences and new meanings so that you can practice um, uh, before the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're wiring your brain to predict automatically differently
Yeah.
in the heat of the moment.
And the sticking point, and I don't have to tell you, of course, is it is so hard. The prediction tells me to,
Mhm.
and not following what the instructions are is so difficult, but that's the only
Yeah.
way you modify the prediction engine, I assume.
Yeah. So let me give you an example because I'm writing a book actually right now about some of this stuff. So I have these two popular science books, which are popular science books. They're not
Mm.
really meant as instruction manuals in any way, but a lot of people have found a lot of utility in the science, which I think is great. That's what science is for. It's to make your life better. So it's to understand so that you can use that understanding to the benefit of architecting your life the way you want it to be, to
Mm.
have agency. Everybody can use a little more agency in their life. It's not a self-help book, I should say. That's the unofficial title is this is not a fucking self-help book. This is a this is a
Take
I
my money
wanted
now.
I wanted it to be the actual title, but the publisher wasn't going to go for
Oh,
the
come on.
I know. But the thing is that the difference is that I'm explaining, if a self-help book is simplifying this much, this book is more like here. It's
Mhm.
explaining some basic scientific principles that then you can use in your own life. And so here's an example. Before I gave my TED talk, I did a TED talk back in 2017, at the end of 2017. I was in my mid 50s at that point, and I had to memorize an 18 and a half minute talk, memorize, like word for word, and make it look natural, like I wasn't memorizing it, in front of 1,000 people. I had to give this talk in front of 1,000 people. And I wasn't so practiced at public speaking at that point. Um, and so I knew that this was going to be a real challenge for me, that I was going to be flushed with signals, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't want to experience stage fright, and I didn't want to experience anxiety. And so here's what I did. I started to practice making myself worked up and practice categorizing, creating categories that were different than anxiety or fear,
Mm.
like determination, anticipation, excitement,
Sure.
enthusiasm. And so, here's what I did. I gave the talk as I was practicing. I would turn the TV on really loud. I would jump up and down and I would give the talk from memory, doing it that way. Or I also, not or, but when I was actually in um, San Francisco to give the talk, as the guys were building the stage, I got on to the stage and gave the talk while all the hammering was going on. Um, I also practiced as people were coming in. I was standing in the wings at the top, so I could see 1,000 people coming in. They're loud and they're no, and there I was giving my talk out loud. Nobody could hear me. I was like up,
Mm.
up in the wings, but um, so basically, I was exposing myself to these really uncomfortable situations where I was deliberately attempting to put my body into the state that it would be in,
Mhm.
and um, and actively attempting to experience something differently. And it worked more or less,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you could judge for yourself. You can go watch the talk and see what you think. But I mean, literally, right before I went on stage, I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. That is how, actually, even as I'm talking about it now, I can feel
Feel
myself.
it,
I'm
right?
starting to heat up. Yeah. I think that once you start to practice this, you realize just how much control you have um, over not just the labeling of an experience, but literally what the signals how you experience those signals, what they
Yeah.
mean for you. I think the thing that you have to remember is also that it isn't going to necessarily be less comfortable, more comfortable. Like it could still feel really uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But the meaning, that is what your body prepares to do, what your brain is preparing your body to do, is what will change. And that means the discomfort will last for a shorter time.
Yeah, I hear you. And that's going to sound familiar to everybody listening. We're about 28 minutes in. Can I ask you one question just because I'm confused and maybe you can clear it up for
Of
me?
course, it's very confusing stuff.
It
Yeah.
is. I mean, and I'm a nerd and it's confusing to me. So, like, I get it. But I think so. Part of the prediction is predicated on that interoception part. Like, I'm going to check what's going on inside of me to see what I need to do next. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes and no. So I
Okay.
think your brain, so interoception is just your brain's modeling of the sensory state of your body.
Mhm.
It's not your awareness of what's in your body.
Right.
It's your brain anticipating the sensory signals from the body and correcting those signals as necessary. It works exactly the same way as exteroception, which
Mm.
is like vision, say, or audition, hearing. So when your brain is making a prediction, let's say it's going to predict that your heart is going to race, it sends the signals down to the brainstem and the spinal cord to increase your heart rate.
Mhm.
Copies of those go to primary interoceptive cortex, which is in your insula, and starts to prepare the sensation of an increased heart rate. And then eventually the signals come up from the body to either confirm that prediction or correct it.
Okay.
Interoception is the brain's modeling of the sensory state of the body in the same way that vision is the modeling of the um,
Okay.
visual signals in the world. It works pretty much the same way, with some differences. Actually, I guess I should say it's not exactly the same because with vision, like primary visual cortex V1, which is at the back here in your occipital part of your brain, has a map in it of the retina. It's called an array to array map. You've got sensors in the retina, and then you've got neurons in V1, and they coordinate. There's like a map. For for olfaction, primary olfactory cortex has no map of your nose. The the spatial location of chemicals is compressed away. What you get in your nose, the olfactory receptors in your nose, um, are in your nasal cavity, are um, tell you something about the concentration or the intensity of chemicals. It doesn't tell you about the spatial location of those chemicals. The only way that you can locate a smell is by moving your head. Like, you have two nostrils, so you could, yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying here is that vision, a lot of the processing of vision happens in the cerebral cortex as signals make their way from the primary area to the front in the middle of your brain.
Mhm.
There's a lot of what's called signal compression going on, meaning there's a lot of summarizing going on. For olfaction, a lot of that summarizing happens right at the receptor. And for interoception, it's very similar to olfaction. meaning you don't have a map of your body in your brain, not the way you have a map of your eye, your retina, or your cochlea.
Mhm.
Um, and you can tell this, for example, you know what your brain can do in interoception is it knows if there's a sensory change in your thorax versus your abdomen,
Mhm.
and it can tell for any organ if it's happening at near the center of the organ or somewhere near the edge of the organ. And it's also able to tell the intensity of certain types of signals, like pressure versus, say, oxygen concentration or whatever. But it doesn't have you don't have precise sensory awareness of parts of your body internally. And the common sense example here is appendicitis. When you have I don't know if you've ever had appendicitis, but
Luckily, no.
yeah, so my husband has had it, and the way that it starts is that you have a dull ache in your gut, like you've got a tummy ache or maybe bad cramps or something, and it doesn't localize to your appendix until right before the appendix is about to burst. So
Oh, that's
yeah, or any woman. I'm talking now to you, my female compadres here. You know, can you tell the difference between menstrual cramps and having a bathroom cramps? Not always. Not always. And in fact, when you're in labor, in the early stages of labor, you actually can't tell. Later, you can definitely tell. But at the beginning, you can't tell. And the reason why is that it's like that by design. That's how the wiring is. So when you feel something really specific, like when you feel your heart beating, you're actually doing not interoception, but exteroception. Your heart is jamming itself against your breastplate, your sternum, and that's what you're feeling.
hmm.
You actually can't feel your heart beating. If you if you experience some precise internal sensation, it's likely that your brain is guessing as opposed to you really have that's a precise sensation there
Yeah.
because you just don't have even with your muscles, like if you are exercising and you're like, I've been working with the same trainer for 25 years, I have really good exteroceptive awareness of my muscles. I can say, well, it's this muscle, not that muscle, or, it's this point, not that point. But that's not interoception. Interoception is very imprecise. And that's why we experience our internal sensations, our internal interoceptive sensations as mood. We experience the changes internally to our body as I feel great or I feel like shit.
Mhm.
I feel worked up. I feel calm. I feel comfortable. I feel uncomfortable. Mood, or what scientists call affect, is like a barometer of your body budget. It's like how well is your brain managing the your body, and like what are the sensory consequences of that management?
Okay. So and I promise I won't drag it out much longer because I want to take up too much of your time. But that affect, that's what's going on inside of me. Okay, fine. When we work with anxious people and somebody will say, okay, we're doing, say, an exposure together in session, whatever, and I'll get, oh, there's that dip in my stomach, which confirms for that person that they're doing something wrong. I should
No,
be
they're
continuing.
not. No,
Right.
no. I
Well,
mean,
but they
no.
interpret it that way.
Yes,
This
yes, but
feeling says that I
yeah.
shouldn't do this exposure. This is
Yeah, so
dangerous.
sometimes you feel like shit, not because you're doing something wrong, but because it's just really hard.
Yeah, thank you. There you go.
So this is how I do things based on the science. I'm just quintessentially a scientist, right? So this is how I do things. When I feel like shit, when I feel like the world is ending, okay, I don't think that what do people do when they feel that feeling like they're being crushed by life in that moment, right? What do? Well, you either look to the world to see what's wrong, or you look to yourself to see what's wrong. Like,
Right.
what's wrong with me as a person? Well, I look to my body budget. I say, okay, I feel like the world is ending. And I really feel like the world is ending. Okay. And I think, okay, I'm having a body budgeting problem right now. What am I going to do about it? It's not that I'm comfortable. I'm not comfortable, but I am resisting the meaning that I am anxious or afraid or fearful. Because what do you do when you're anxious or afraid or fearful? You withdraw.
Yeah.
But if your brain is having trouble predicting, what do you need to do? You need to forage for information that will allow you to predict better the next time. So that's what you need to do. And so what I do when I'm feeling like the world is ending, I'm using that as a barometer of my body budget. I'm saying, okay, I'm not predicting very well right now. I clearly don't have the spoons to predict very well right now. So I'm going to do something different instead. I'm going to ask somebody for information. I'm going to, if I need to check, like, is everything okay? Is anything wrong? you know, or I might decide I just need to have a bath and go to bed.
Right.
And tomorrow will be a better day. I just need some rest. Or I might have some water because, oftentimes when you're really dragging, it's not that you're hungry, it's that you're dehydrated, and you usually feel it hours later. So, for example, if you don't hydrate sufficiently in the morning, then you get those afternoon doldrums where you're like falling asleep at your desk and you think, oh, geez, I better go have a cup of coffee. But no, actually, it's that you just didn't drink enough water in the morning. And if you drink some water now, you're probably feeling better in a couple of hours. It's very slow, but these are the kinds of things I do. And I really resist, which is not to say that I never experience anxiety, but I experience an increase in arousal. I don't always make anxiety out of it. I think that you have a lot of flexibility there, if you build that flexibility into the system before the heat of the moment. So you're talking about exposure after the heat of the moment, and that's great. But I think if you're prone to anxiety, then you could practice in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, but we could talk for 4 hours on this and we won't, but that's where if all exposure is response prevention, part of that, that's the practice in advance. As
Yeah.
soon as I experience this, I have this real experience inside of me. It's real. It's happening. I want to do something. No.
Yes. But
Not that, something else to forage
well,
for better information.
yeah. So if you think about it, every experience you have, every action you take is a combination of the remembered past and the
Mhm.
sensory present.
Mhm.
So that means that in the moment, you can either change what you're remembering, how you're making sense of things, or the sensory present. And in the moment, you can't go back and change the past. I mean, that's what you try to do in therapy. You try to change the meaning of the past. But what you can do is cultivate experiences now, invest some energy to so that you will remember differently in the future.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
This was awesome. Thanks for hanging out a little longer. I know I kept you longer than I promised I would, but
No worries. No worries.
yeah, that was really great. I mean, I could talk to you about this for hours and I'm sure people enjoy hearing about it. So, if people want to know more about you, and I will come and wrap it up and I'll give you all the links, including Dr. Barrett's TED Talk and all that stuff. Where should they start?
Well, I think lisafeldmanbarrett.com is a great place to start. There's a lot of free stuff there, a lot of podcasts, a lot of lectures, a lot of articles that I've written for the New York Times or other kinds of outlets. They're all free. It's all freely available on the website.
Dr. Barrett, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
My pleasure.
All right. You have a great day. Okay, we are back. That was awesome. I am really sort of a nerd when it comes to this stuff. You guys have followed along in this podcast or this YouTube channel for any length of time, know this about me already. And I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit starstruck to talk to Dr. Barrett. She wrote How Emotions Are Made, which is an incredible book talking about the theory of constructed emotions and how our internal experiences are built based on predictive models that our brain uses to kind of regulate our body energy budget. It's a really great bridge between, I think, the emotional, cognitive, thinking, feeling, interpretive experience that we all know as anxiety and fear, and our other emotions as well, and sort of the biology underneath that. But it's not crazy like nervous system regulation nonsense. It's actually really useful explanations that might sort of inform what we do with these things, but she is not over promising crazy like biohacks and instant calming mechanisms. In fact, one of my favorite moments of this interview is when she talked about how she wanted to name her next book, "This is not an effing self-help book." She's very well grounded and she's a true scientist, and I appreciate that about her. So she wrote How Emotions Are Made. She also wrote 7.5 Lessons About the Brain, which I have not read yet, but I'm definitely going to do that next. If you want to know more about Dr. Barrett, you can go to her website at lisafeldmanbarrett.com. I'll also, if you go to theanxioustruth.com/327, you'll have all the show notes on this particular episode. I will put links to her website and her books if you want to check that out. She mentioned a TED Talk. I'll try to link that as well. So if you pop on over again, theanxioustruth.com/327, I'll try to have all the links in case you want to follow up on some of the things that she talked about. So understandably, because Dr. Barrett is a true research scientist, that is her bailiwick, and I appreciate that about her. Today got a little bit technical, maybe, so if you made it through the end, I appreciate you hanging in there. If you have questions about this stuff, it will be understandable. You might want to go and check out the books and check out her TED Talks and things of that nature to get a little bit of grip on that. But also I'm going to try and do a little follow-up here or arrange a time when we can talk about this in greater detail. I'm going to talk about the theory of constructed emotions even more, whether it's here or on Disordered on my social media feeds. So I understand this was a little bit technical. It can get a little bit complicated, but hang in there. We'll work on it together as best we can. Of course, if you want to be able to interact with me and ask questions about this sort of stuff, Josh and I over at the Disordered podcast are about to release the Disordered Community app. That's where we're going to hang out, where you can do things like ask questions about what you hear on that podcast. And also this one, I'm going to be posting the Anxious Truth episodes over there as well. So if you go to disorder.fm, check out that podcast, get on the mailing list. We'll let you know when the app is released, which hopefully will be in the next month or so. And yeah, that's it. So if you made it this far and hung out through all the technical stuff, thank you. I appreciate that. And that's episode 327 in the books. I will end with a quick reminder that whatever you take out of today's episode or any episode of The Anxious Truth or Disordered or anything you see me talk about on social media, or maybe you've written in my books, that I've written in my books, anything that you take out of those resources that let you make a little bit of a change, challenge some maladaptive belief, challenge the idea that you have to control and stop anxiety, learn to be a little bit better at experiencing it without hitting the eject button on those experiences. Anytime you take anything out of these things and change direction, even just a little bit, you are winning. Like, these little experiences add up over time. Today on this episode, where we're talking about feeding new information into that predictive model to correct the prediction, this is how we do it. So even though you feel like maybe the progress is slow and the steps are tiny, don't beat yourself up. Be nice to yourself. Be patient. Keep going. You learn every time you do something different. So leverage that. You can do it. If I didn't think you could do it, I wouldn't sit behind this microphone multiple times a week forever. So that's it. I will ask a favor, and that would be, if you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or some platform that lets you leave a rating and a review, if you really dig The Anxious Truth, leave a 5-star rating. If you think it's worth it, of course. And if you really, really dig The Anxious Truth, maybe take a second and write a few words, few lines, a paragraph about why you like it, because then other people find the podcast and more people get help. And that's why I do this to begin with anyway. Of course, if you're watching today, listening on YouTube, and you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, maybe do that. Just hit the subscribe button, or at least the like button on the video if you enjoyed this conversation, because that tells YouTube that you appreciate the time that I take to make these damn videos, so they don't bury them and hide them in an algorithm. But regardless of what you do, if you hung out today and you come back next week and you're listening along, if you never hit the like button, you never write a review, you never subscribe, that's totally fine too. If you're getting something out of it and you come back every week and listen, I appreciate you. So I will be back in another 2 weeks. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about. Actually, I might be back next week. I think I have to do a little fill-in episode, so we might have 3 weeks in a row of Anxious Truth episodes, which is unusual because usually I publish every 2 weeks. Anyway, I'll be back in a week or two. Not sure what we're talking about, but I will be here. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you in the next one.